Hi everybody, I'm John Honig from the Scenic Factory. We're going to build an 18-inch pine tree from a kit. 18-inch pine tree is going to be about 45 feet in 1/35 scale. We're going to put a spread on it at the bottom of about 20 feet, which is about 6 inches across, which we'll put about 3 inches on each side. This is how the kits come. Basically everything is inside. Cut it open. Comes sealed in a poly bag. Got our trunks, instructions, which we're not going to need for this. And then we have another bag inside. That's got our fern and dead branch material. What I want to do first, open this up. Probably could have did this ahead of time. Be real careful. Although they're wrapped good, they're still fragile. I'm going to do this video unedited, or try to do it unedited, just so you can see the actual start to finish time. So if you want to fast forward through parts, it'll probably get there easier. A lot of it is going to be repetition. Now they come wrapped in bubble wrap. If I can get it open here. Okay. Alright, we're going to take a trunk. First off, what I like to do is use a clamp with a couple pieces of balsa wood for a stand. You can also drill a hole in a block of wood. These are 3/8. As you see, we leave an inch on the end. That's for clamping. Cut this off on the end. That way you don't have to clamp onto the good part of the tree and wind up cutting that off on the end and lose it. And another thing you can do, these are 18-inch. You can, if you want, pre-plan it. You know, you can cut 2 inches off. You can shorten these trees up. It's kind of fun about kits. You can do whatever you want. So what I do, just put it in the end, clamp it up a little bit. Just remember when you're starting this that you're going to be cutting this inch off, so don't start your branches down too far. Actually, I'll go over quick tools with you first. I use an awl, hobby awl. I send a T-pin with the kits just in case you don't have anything. If you're going to do these or do a lot of them, these are a couple, I don't know what this was, you know, 250. Excel makes them, a couple other ones. It's just nice and easy. Your usual tweezers, whatever you want, and the trusty snips. I know everybody uses these for sprues and models. I actually have a good pair that I keep just for those, but basically I use these for everything. They're great. Alright, we're going to a bag of... Now what these come with a big box of Plumosa, a small package also, which is more for upper branches or wherever you want to put them. You know, in actuality, there's more than enough in this one package to do both trees, but I gave you 2. You're going to have a lot left over in the end. Make other trees, use it for camouflage, whatever you want. I just want to make sure that you have enough. And it also comes with a small package of the dead branch material, which again, you can put on as much or as little as you want. We're going to make this tree kind of full. As you do it, you can make it as full or less full as you want. If you're going to be doing a bunch of them, you don't have to get real carried away with putting a ton of foliage on. It looks good, but if there's other trees around it, you can do them lightly. You know, maybe the most foreground tree, do heavy, just to save you some time. So we're going to get right into it. Basically, I just take it, I dump it out, I spread it around, just have a clean area to work with, and in the end you can just put it back in a container. Another thing I want to point out is on a lot of these, a branch like this basically has a couple different branches in it. You're not going to put this whole thing on, even if this was a 22-inch tree. You know, you're going to want to snip this off, this, and you'll use these for individual branches as you go. Now, to start the bottom, we want about a 3-inch each side spread, which is going to give us kind of a uniform tree here. So I'll take a piece like this. Now it kind of looks a little bit beat up. There's actually small branches on the end that we're going to use towards the top. I can tell right off the bat. And I'm going to snip it and use the piece on the end here that's about 3 inches. Now another thing, some of these have very long tips on the end. You can leave them, you can snip them. I'll usually snip half of what is here. So I still wind up with a tip. Each one of these is not going to look perfect. It's going to look, you know, even if it looks like this. But as you go and you keep filling in, it all blends together and turns plush. So I'm going to take a couple of these. Anytime I snip these little ones off I'm going to use, I put off to the side a little bit because I know I'm going to use those as I get up a little bit higher. Dig through. Same with this one. This one's got a tweak at the end. No problem. Snip it. It's good to go. The bottom we're going to put about five branches around. Again, it's all up to you. As full or as thin as you want. What we do is, I use these Dixie cups, disposable, get a million in a package, for the glue, and plain white glue. Just squirt a little bit on top. Don't need much, dries out, put a little bit more in there. On this particular tree we're going to start up, remember we're going to take away the inch, we're going to start up about 2.5 plus inches because in the end we're going to put dead branch material on. You always want to hold the back side. Although these are fully sealed in matte medium and have bark texture on them, they can still be fragile. The bottom's not too bad. I list on the website and in all instructions how fragile everything is. It's really not that bad. I'll show you in the end. You can actually knock this stuff around. This is really preserved. A misconception on preserving this. Let's dip in white glue. That's where we're going to start our first. This is basically where everything's going to start from. I'm going to rotate it a little. Another. And these bigger ones, you don't need tweezers. Again, on this particular, we'll stagger it a little bit. We're probably going to put five, maybe even pull 6 branches out on the bottom. A little white glue, just a little bit of white glue. And you're only sticking the awl or T-pin in maximum of 1/8 of an inch. You don't need much. Now that's 3. So what we're going to do is we will do 5. I do each one individually. If you start putting a bunch of holes in it, you're going to lose track and you're not going to know where you are. Again, same thing. Tends to get a little bit of a tip on the end. I'll take half of it off. And you can also trim everything in the end. If there's something you don't like. This can actually go quite quickly once you get some repetition down. But there's really nothing cooler than these trees, simulating pines. Alright, that's how fast we did the first round, which is going to basically show us what our tree is going to be. I'll give you a little top view here to give you an idea. Now as we go, we'll try to get some closer. Now this is where it's up to you. If you want a full tree, now I'll move up about 1/4 of an inch, a little bit more, and do the same thing. And as I come up to the last one, I'll bump another 1/4 of an inch, same thing. In reality, you can go 1/2 inch, you know, or do one and see. I mean, you can spread it off. Even a couple branches on here makes it look like a pine tree. So again, it comes down to what you want. Another thing I do as I go is I'll take a piece of wood, just so you don't lose track of, you know, you want to taper this in as you go. The first couple stay about the same width out, but then you want to start to slowly taper it in. I'll take a straight edge or anything, and I'll actually go from the tip down like this. I'll show you once we drop this off the box, just to keep a uniform taper up. Sometimes if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden it'll taper right here and all you have a 1/2 tree to go yet, and it gets a little messed up. So same thing. But try not to put them directly on top of each other. Like if there's 2 here, the next step up, put in the middle of those 2. Again, once it gets full, you don't see any. It's just it all blends together. you know, once we get up a little bit further, we'll have to use, it's just plain easier with tweezers. It's not for durability. There, I lost my hole. Some of these will turn one way or the other. Just alter them around a little bit. Again, once you fill them in, they start to just, everything blends together. I'm actually going to switch to tweezers now just to make it a little bit easier. Now again, just keep digging through the pile. Snip them as you need them. I like to keep branches close to the trunk. Really in nature they're not as close, but it helps make the tree look a lot fuller. And in a different video, that'll be a follow-up after, we'll be detailing this a little bit more. We can go in, once we put the dead branches in, and actually put a little bark material on these, or on the dead branches to blend it in more. Again, same thing, that might be a little long. If they wind up being too long, pop them out and trim them off. Again, white glue, everything dries clear. Of course, I don't need to make a hole in that one. I said 1/4 inch or so. I'm actually already, I don't know, probably up 3/8 from the first bottom one now. I increment them a little bit as we go. I don't keep straight all the way across, otherwise you'll be able to see right through it and you won't see the staggering. So each one go up a little bit. Another thing you can do is if you get up a little bit, you got a big space, or a space that you think is you're not gonna like, just take a filler piece. Doesn't even have to have a point on it. It can just be let me see if I can find one here. Almost a scrap. And stick it in there and it'll create a filler. But as you'll see, it doesn't take long. Now this particular plumosa, after it's been preserved, goes through another drying process, and then it actually gets dyed. I'll show you the difference of this plumosa to the plumosa we use in the distress trees. If you just preserve it and we leave it, we don't dye it again, it'll actually discolor a little bit. It doesn't fall apart, it stays together, but it'll actually give you different tones, which looks good when you're doing a distressed or a dying tree. Again, I snip off the top, and that's what's left. But I have 4 branches for later once I get up a little bit. So there's not much waste in what is left over that's a total scrap. You can use it in your diorama or as camo. See, now this one in particular, I don't know if you can see it, but is a little bit longer than it needs to be. Again, it's got a little glue on the end. Doesn't matter. Snip it off. And keep going. Now these do take a little bit, depending on the size. Doing the 18-inch size just so we can speed it along. But if you have room for it, a real cool tree is when you get into those 22-inch and up, which in the Scenic diorama that we're going to be doing, we're going to have them in there. But you really need the space for them. They do look cool. There we go. You see, starts to take shape immediately, which is neat. Same thing, got kind of a ragged one, it's got some pieces here and there. I'll snip it. It's not as full as I'd like, but it's going to be in the mix here. It'll blend right in. See, so there's not much waste. Let's see, we're starting to look good. Towards the end I'll take this, so we'll show you a little bit closer on. Check it again, it's still alright. Spinning. See, now we've gained about, I don't know, a little over an inch. It's quite full. It's, you know, as this thing keeps growing, it'll stay full. Same thing, big tip on it. Snip half of it off, bang, looks good. Sure. Now right after this one, we're going to start to be conscious that we're going to slowly start to bring it in a little bit. If you look at the side here, these are all pretty much equal. After I put the other two here, we're going to step this one in a tiny bit, and we'll slowly start to step up. Again, this is low-key video. I'm still going to do a high def. Again, we have a couple liners there. And if you want, just put these on like this, and after you can go through with a little pair of snips and trim them how you want. But for those who want it, I'll still do a high def video. This just gets the idea to those. I'm going to step up a tiny bit here. Take one more full one. And here's an example. This one's, we got some little ones on the bottom here, but we're missing a piece here. We'll trim that. The top is actually snapped, so we'll take that. Won't have the tip, doesn't matter. And it's got a little curve to it, doesn't matter. Just if you have two in a row with a curve, just make one go one way, one the other way. There it blends right in. Give you an idea. That's full. We could actually take a third of this out. Whoops, easy. And it would still look like a good tree. We're just going to make it full. See, this kind of gives you the idea. Now, once we add the dead branches, it'll really come alive. Usually I do it down on an actual hard surface. I had to prop it up on a box here just to make sure you can see. Again, a lot of this is repetition. Just fast forward through it if you want to get to a different part. I just wanted to show you what it actually takes start to finish. Check it. It's around the border. Size it up. And again, I kind of overstressed these being super fragile. They're really not. I wouldn't throw them around, but again, just a lot of repetition. Just Just keep checking, making sure. This needs to be stepped in a little. Now I can visually tell where we're stepping it in. I would refrain from, unless you're looking for a real light, I don't know how to describe it, you know, tree that's really, really droopy. You can put these in a little bit more of an angle, but these will naturally come down just a little bit. In the end, I'll show you a tree from a little while ago that, you know, it'll drop 3/8 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch just to give it kind of a little natural. But again, you can do whatever you want. Even ones that aren't that full, some of these are fuller than others. Doesn't matter. Just go right in. Now this one, if I compare it, you know, we're starting to step in a little bit, which is what we want. And even that's too big. So we'll snip it off. That might be too small. Don't worry about it. Keep them straight. If you put them in the holes too big, they might tilt a little bit. Try to prop them up on another branch if you have to until it dries. Like this one is drooping, but it's okay. Glue. Here's another piece that's just basically, it's got 3 smaller branches that we'll definitely use as we get higher. Same with this. We just snipped, and we got 2 complete pieces. Now the big trees, the 22-inch kits, we send out a big package of this Plumosa, which actually has much larger pieces than this even. So you can have a real big spread at the bottom if you want. And same thing as you move up, those giant pieces turn into little pieces. So again, keep moving around. If you cut them too small, like that one, I know I cut too small off the bat. I'll just leave that up top because I know in a couple of rows we'll be using that. Here's another one, doesn't have a point on it, but it's got a lot of really nice fat foliage. So we'll snip that one out of the middle. Take a peek, measure it up, looks alright. Once I get a little bit further, I'm going to drop it off the box. Now distressed trees, I call them distressed, dying, you know, those kind of trees. They're actually quite quick. You're using 50% dead branch material and 50% the Plumosa basically, or whatever you want. Again, I think I mentioned before that this Plumosa, okay, now here's one that's shooting upward, doesn't really fit the mix, has a little natural turn to it. Take it out, I'm going to flip it over, re-glue it, and stick it back in. And that brings it down a little bit. Again, at the end, you don't want to really push these down, you will snap them off. But if there's one that just won't cooperate, you can actually push it enough, even if it snaps a little bit and you can prop it up on another branch, just dab a little glue on it, and it'll wind up staying. And make sure that they stay relatively straight. And give it a little snip some of the tip off. there's usually plenty of fern material. And we'll start getting this step in a little bit more. I'm going to pop up about a ½ inch here. See, that one's a little bit long, but what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to snip a little bit off the tip. And again, you can snip it as you go, and in the end. Now I'll open up the smaller package when I get a little bit higher. You may find you don't even need to. It's almost like a freebie because a lot of times you won't even need it. But we include 3 trunks now. Just because there's left over, so you can squeeze quite a few trees out of it. So even this one's got to be snipped down a little bit. It's just back and forth. Goes quick if you have a radio on, but you can't hear me. Here you go. And again, this is still pretty straight. We're not really coming in much. Well, a little bit if you look at the, if you line it up with the tip a little bit. It's got a little bit of a taper. You don't want them going like that. It's not natural. That's why these are long and slender. Some people make them short, I've seen, and put a, looks like it went in a pencil sharpener. It just does not look natural. This is actually staying pretty full. I was looking to see if we needed to stuff any filler pieces in. I said even if there was an open area here, you know, you just take a stubby piece, you know, you can just scatter a couple, and then visually it doesn't look like a stubby piece, it just keeps the fullness going. We will. That one's a little long, so I'm going to take a little bit off the tip and a little bit off the back. Oops. It's kind of difficult to build and film because I need it in front of me, but I need the camera on the other side. Alright, well, add a couple extras here. There's a nice fat piece. Okay, that's got a lot of, just put it also, we're going to trim it down, and again, it's got our stuff for up top, or camo, or whatever you want to do with it. But we will we're quite full, so we can. Alright, actually I can even tap into some of these other pieces here that were. So you get a lot of this, but with a tip on it if it was the large kit. And the small kits, the 11s. You use a lot of pieces that are on the smaller side, but again, you wind up with an abundance. This is actually small for the area, but it's almost like a filler. It'll blend in there. Now this is one where the hole is a little big. If the hole seems too big, but there's a little bit of fern at the end, push the end of the fern in with a little piece of the fern, and it'll wedge it in there. And what we'll do once we get a little bit further is start to space it out a little bit. We're going to do a traditional, gets a little bit thinner at the top, throw the dead branches in. Another fat piece, but we want to taper this in a little. Again, it's a lot of back and forth. It's alright. This glue dries pretty quick, traditional white glue. I mean, the stuff on the bottom probably won't move anywhere at the moment. But again, the neat thing about kits is you can do whatever you want. Now these are kits. When we do full trees or sell full trees, I'll actually show you what we do to those, because they go through, just like the trunks and the bark texture, they go through a couple other steps. We detail up the dead branches a little bit, blend them in a little bit. Alright, what I'm going to do is, it's actually the time now where I'm going to take this down, as you can still see, so we keep working our way up. Down here. The glue will skin over. Throw a little more on every now and then. Now, I don't use Caspia with the pine trees. I used to in the model railroad days. I think this looks a lot better, but Caspia models other kinds of pine trees also. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, that's why we do have the glycerin preserved Caspia. And the reason for that is if you've used Caspia, it doesn't take much for it to crumble all over the place and fall apart. The preserved stays soft, but you can still glue it. You can bounce it and really nothing falls off. It just makes it much easier to work with. But you can kind of take this technique and adapt it to whatever you want. But this Plumosa, as you see it, is pretty much what it's going to stay at. This is preserved and dyed. It's not gonna change. If you've ever tried to do this on your own or use glycerin and preserve anything, especially this, you'll notice that it'll turn colors. Like I said with the distress trees, It's great if you're doing nothing but distress trees. Now here's a piece that just doesn't really fit anything. It's kind of mangled, it's missing a tip, it's missing pieces here. It'll fit in perfect here. It'll just look like another part of the tree. So there's really nothing wasted. Let's keep working your way up. Same thing, a piece, long tip, a little curve on it, snip it off. There is repetition, they do take a while. I don't think I would want to mass plant a forest on a model railroad, but there will be a couple hundred of these, or at least 100 of these, all different sizes on the diorama we're going to be doing. Just nothing looks nicer than a bunch of these together. I'm hoping to keep my cat down here. Yeah, there. Match it up. I'd like to start tapering it. Now when I get up about another 2 inches, or which will be the equivalent of half the tree or so, we will open the other box and kind of pick through everything. Sorry about that. Keep turning and keep going. See, a couple of these, like this one, is up a little bit high. I will push it down a little bit. Oops. I said there, we did actually snap that. But it's right on the edge in the glue line. So once that dries, it'll be fine. This on my short piece. Perfect. It's too long, so it's got the tip, so we're going to take the tip off altogether. Now this is one that's got a little bit too big of a hole. Nope, no it doesn't. It's going to rest it on the other one. But it's aiming upwards like that other one was, so what we're going to do is take it out, flip it over, a little more glue on it. And now and then you'll lose the hole, you'll have to redo a hole. Or you'll stare looking at it or trying to find it for a while. Another thing you can do, which I'll get into a little bit more in the detail video, is if you want to simulate more dead actual pine boughs, you can airbrush a little bit of tan, a little orange mixed in. Acrylic only. You'll find out quickly if you spray anything other than water base on this, and I spray it dry. I wouldn't spray anything and soak it. On occasion I do that. What you can do on a lower one, or even maybe pick one out of the middle, is just snap it so it's hanging down. It looks like it's broke from the wind or something happened, and airbrush that, or airbrush it prior and then put it in and it'll look like a snapped over branch. A cool effect. Now we're going to start going up a little bit higher. Check it. Now we're midway. I'm going to do what I call breakaway a little bit, which means I'm going to space it a little bit more as I go after this round. I won't keep it as bunched. It'll thin out a little bit. For later, actually there's a perfect filler. No tip, but it's still bulky. Again, these are low-key videos. These are just trying to give you an idea how we do it. The kits do come with pretty good instructions and pictures. Plus there's pictures on the website of completed trees. The new website, the Scenic Dial, or I'm sorry, ScenicFactoryDial.com, has also other pictures that aren't in other places. Well, they have some repetition, but just to show you a little more close-ups. Let's give you a little idea of the progress so far. It starts to bush up. I'm not really sure how long we have into this so far, but a top view. See, it stays nice and full. But we've gone pretty far, and it's not too long. Again, this is a pretty tall tree. On the diorama, we'll have some of the bigger trees, and even some bigger yet that we don't actually sell. They're 26 inch. We'll probably throw a couple of those in there. We have the room for it. Your basic diorama, I don't even know if you have room for this. 15 inch is very popular. But a full actual scale tree just isn't super practical. Even if it is to scale, it would look funny to have a giant tree with your armor next to it. And you don't need to cut these tips off as you go. You can actually leave them hanging all over the place if you want. In the end, snip them as you go. You don't want a perfectly Christmas tree looking thing. And again, here and there you can even leave a branch out. Or like I said, stick in a dead one. And again, if you're doing a bunch of them together, you can get by with half of what you see here probably, and it'll still look good. And then just on the outside trees, do the heavy foliage, or real thick foliage anyway. Once you get halfway up, it'll start to taper in and get more sporadic and go quicker. I think the hardest part is getting the bottom the right width or the right setup. And again, just making sure you're not going like that. You know, it's nice and gradual and it tapers up. I mean, again, are we duplicating 100% nature? No. Are we making it look like it? Yes. Now everybody's got their own way, and there'll be people that are watching this that say I just go to the flower shop and get some plumosas and put glycerin in it and it's all well. You're one of the lucky ones then, because there's a certain window to preserve, not only preserve it, but to use the right ratio with glycerin and how you prepare the glycerin, the amount of soak time, and all the procedures after. Obviously I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I will tell you, to make a batch, it takes 6 weeks, or it takes me 6 weeks. And I've tried many different ways, wasted tons and tons of material, and even then I had a six month window to make sure that it came out right. I stand behind it. And again, you can use it for anything. Ferns, camouflage. But on the other hand, the other thing I say is, you know, we sell other products that you can go outside and get depending on where you live. But I'll tell you what, if you're only making a couple of these trees, the amount of time it takes you to go to the store, then get the glycerin, and again, there's different kinds of glycerin. Sit online for 3 hours trying to figure out how to do it, searching everything under the sun, then trying it, driving all over town for your materials, then doing the dowels, then trying to make the bark look right. Honestly, you cannot go wrong with these trees for the cost, because it basically takes all the guesswork out. And I am all for people doing things on their own, because that's how I learned. But sometimes, just like anything, people don't have access to things. They don't have time. In this day and age, time is not as plentiful. I only wish I could have just bought these when I was younger. Like I said about the dyeing, if you just preserve glycerin and then leave it, and as it dries, that'll look great for a couple weeks usually. And then you'll start to see it changing. Some will stay vibrant green, some will change faster than others. Some will almost turn white. And you're like, uh-oh, what happened? You know, with handling it, some needles will fall off here and there. But not many. Alright, I still have this whole pile here of ferns, but what I'm going to do, just to get some smaller pieces quicker, since we have it, let's open the second box. This takes a lot of the guesswork out of snipping pieces, but again, you get a whole package of this stuff also. I'm actually going to keep it a little bit separate than the other one. I'll show you. You know, we get average pieces, or like that, and like that. You know, an HO scale tree or 11 to 13 inch, you know, down in that size. You know, these are almost, these are the bottom branches, so. And again, I'm doing this in real time. just so you know the actual time it takes, but you can fast forward it. It's got a little bow in it. We'll see what happens when we add a couple branches up top. You might not notice it. Yeah, I like to snip them as I go, just because I know. Oops, I'll droop down a little bit. This is one where I think we're pushing a little bit farther. There we go, it's stuck. These are relatively easy. And if you do a couple of them, it's easier yet. I kind of consider them almost a craftsman kit just because of the amount of stuff and time involved, but they're really not. Again, these trunks are made with the bark texture powder, so you can either buy those separate, you can make your own dowels. You can, you know, if you want, you can scribe these with a saw. That's the old traditional way. If you're doing model railroad, you know, that looks more normal if you're modeling out in the Midwest. I particularly like the bark texture rather than the saw scribe marks. It's all personal preference. Again, show you the progress here as we're going. See, we're cruising right up. It's looking good. It's full. And we're about halfway. But like I said, we're going to start to space it a little more. You know, once we get up higher yet, we'll be adding some of the dead branch material in. But out of now looking at it, we don't need any filler anywhere. This is, it's going nice and smooth. Again, there'll be a lot of these where you get them, there's got the big tweak in the end. I wouldn't put it on like that because obviously that doesn't look natural, but it's the perfect size if I snip it off. It's one of the trademarks of this fern. You know, some people call it a spirit. I don't know, it's got all different names. Just so you know, the correct name is plumosa, not the plumosa plant, which people get it confused of. Some people call it asparagus fern, air fern. Call it whatever you want, I guess. So even now we're going to start to shorten these up. See, we're halfway on this, and that's how big some of the pieces are now that are going to start to go in. Oops. Turn that a little. I mean, all in all, these trees are fun just because they look so good so quick. Now, even as we get up higher, they can even thin out. You know, once we get up higher, yeah, we'll use much. You know, we can use thinner. Jump up a little bit here. We'll even here. We'll start to use some of these. And again, you can't see, but I get the whole mix out here on the table. The small box, big box, or package. Just keep picking through. In the end, usually what I do is I take another container, put them back in, pieces that you know you're going to use for other trees, and then there's just plain pieces like this, which actually you do use towards the top, that are just plain string. That looks good, camouflage or whatever you want to do with it. You know, can throw it on the bottom, airbrush it brown. Look like broken pieces, but I usually separate those in the end. This one I can see has a curve right off the bat, so we want the curve going down. Oops. Yeah. I was overcorrecting and I popped it out. If it's still got glue on it, just pop it back in. There we go. That's good. You can just hold them up to make sure that they're going to be the right length. Now, I would not, some people also, I would not recommend it, but I do read or see some people spray adhesive on, sprinkle ground foam. These trees I would not. They look better this way. Maybe the lower scale HO to knock some of the, they might look overscale, I guess, to some people. Again, I don't think so. You can do that. Maybe sprinkle a little fine turf on it. I don't think they look any better. I think they look the best untouched. But again, no solvent-based anything. It might look good off the bat, but I guarantee you within a couple days, 3 to 5 days, it's going to look like you sprayed weed killer on it. Just eats these things up. Basically, what glycerin does, the point of glycerin anyway, is when it's in the proper ratio and the fern is in the proper time after being picked to absorb, basically it absorbs the water and glycerin mixture, and then when the water evaporates, the glycerin stays, which keeps it full, which keeps it basically preserved and flexible. If it's done in the wrong mixture or ratio, you may think you preserved it, and everything looks great, but if it falls apart, that means you didn't do it right. The glycerin wasn't absorbed into the plant. So basically, it just dies like a regular plant that doesn't have water. This particular batch of Plumosa is probably, as of right now, 4 months plus. And as you can see, it's green. There's no discolor. Stays together. And yeah, I'm not deterring you from doing it on your own. I'm just telling you from experience, chances are you're going to pull your hair out. Again, if you're doing this for HO or trains, these really are foreground type trees, or its main purpose for dioramas. Nothing stopping you from mass planting them, but even these little ones have some long tips we're going to snip. And see, now we're even getting down to some small ones of this size. That one might be a little bit too small, but if the one next to it is up a little bit, it'll blend right in. And again, at times, to help you out if you want, you can take the stick and you angle it in and it'll show that you're tapering pretty good. Looks good. How far we're getting. There's a lot of repetition to it, but the results are worth it. This couple, that's sticking out a little bit straighter than I would normally have, but I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to keep going. If it does it later, I can knock it down. And cut too small, so I'll leave that off to the side. A lot of smaller ones lined up for a little bit farther. I'm spacing this a little bit farther now. I may come back after and put a couple filler pieces in if I think there's too much space. But just to speed this video up a little bit, we're gonna more glue. Actually, what I'm going to do, normally I'd come back after, but just to show you, there's a pretty good space here. Could be fine. I'm going to go in between some branches. Their hole. I'm just going to put another piece in there. Since I know I think I would want one in there. It doesn't have to be a neat piece. Oops. I'm going to find the hole. Yeah. It just makes me feel a little bit better to fill that in. And again, even when you're done, you can come back tomorrow and add more. And try not to put them directly on top of each other from the layer down. I mean, keep them, you know, if there's two here, just like a triangle, next one will go in the middle. Keep them moving around. Check. That's definitely too big. It's still definitely too big. Bounce it around a little. What I'm going to do is remove some of this stuff. So in order to see the top, oops. here's one that I know is too long at the tip, but it's got a long tip. Put it in. I don't know. You can see it's this one. So I'm going to snip it on site. Oh, wait, no, it's right. Good. It's smarter to wait till the glue dries. That way you don't pull it out by accident. This is where we start getting into a lot of littler pieces. Keep chugging away. Now, a couple more rows and we're actually going to start to add some dead branch material as we go. In the top I intertwine it. See, like now I lost my hole. I didn't make it. Once again, give you an idea of, that's how far, pretty full. Just keep going. Try to adjust this a tiny bit. This is where that comes to personal preference. You can keep it full going up, and you can start to thin it out. I'm kind of going in between, just for video purposes. That one's a little long. Do it a little snip now. And snip them at a little bit of an angle. Like, don't cut them straight off blunt tip. You know, give them a little bit of an angle, that way they still retain a little bit of a point. Again, this could be a little fuller, and what I might do is I'll add some fillers. But to get us to the dead branch part, now what I'll do, usually I go up a little bit further, but we're going to throw some in now. Again, dead branch material. This is actually preserved in glycerin also, which is nice. It's dyed to a nice weathered wood color. There's big pieces. These would use more towards the bottom, but since there's plenty in here, what I'm going to do is, just like the fern, we're going to snip a piece off that we want. And we do it just like the fern. We're going to keep adding fern, so this piece will be a little bit bigger, and the same size as the bows. Same size meaning width. You don't want this hanging out farther. And if it does, snip it. Now, since this is preserved with glycerin, you can actually move these without them snapping off. Now, what I do is I usually wait overnight till the glue dries, or at least holds it in, and then you can tweak it around if you want. The bigger one, bigger pieces that is. The little ones as you get up top, or you just leave those. So I'm going to space things around a little bit here. Put another full bow up there. I'll actually put a little small one there. And I'm going to add another dead piece here, kind of in the same neighborhood size-wise. Now, as you snip off pieces that you want, you still wind up with pieces you can use down below. piece popped off. Just a little bit more. Now what we're going to do is you keep going up. What I'm going to do for video purposes and timing purposes, you switch to adding a dead branch on the bottom. Let me show you that. So I'm going to put it back on our box, do some readjusting. Now this, like everything else, is personal preference. Now these, you have to lift up a little bit to get to. It's going to be kind of hard to see. These holes are going to be a little bit bigger. What we're going to do is find a good looking dead branch piece, a larger piece anyway. Okay, like that. Now these can curve down. Oops. Same thing, white glue. We stick those in. Try to. Ooh, that was almost not good. Actually, I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it for a minute. I'm going to put a couple holes in. Now you can put long dead branches in. I usually go back and I put stubby pieces in. Same thing. Same thing with width. You obviously don't want them to come out farther than the piece itself, but they can be pretty far. And again, they're flexible to a point, I shouldn't say. But unlike traditional, it would snap off in your hands. And your hole may not be big enough like that, because these are a little bit bigger. Do that a little bit. Same thing. Stick it in there. And you know what? You don't have to put these in. This is, again, personal preference, but you want to at least put a couple stubby pieces in. At least a tree that's this size, because no matter what, there's going to be dead branches in the bottom. But as far as these longer ones, and again, there's plenty. You have plenty of these too. If you want to trim these up. I'll actually save that little stubby piece that I'll use as a stub branch. I'll take that piece I just snipped off. That is basically just a straight piece. And that can go in too. And then over here we don't have much going on. I will add another one. Now this is the opposite of going up. As you go down a little bit, shorten these things up. The longest branches will be right under the bows. But you can put shorter pieces in. There's a semi-stubby piece, some branch structure. Now remember, we're taking the inch off down here, so you don't want these going down too far, because we're going to be losing an inch of what we're doing here. Same thing. Here's one that's too long, but we can actually take 2 out of it. What we'll do is we'll snip it. There's a nice little piece that we'll use also. I'll actually snip this again. Stick it in. Now we could actually put more on. I'll try to show you here. Take it off. Oops, to give you an idea. We could put a couple more, maybe some more stubby pieces down here, but this gives you the idea. Same with up top. What will happen up top? Actually, you can kind of see how far we got here. Up top, we would keep doing the same thing. Only the pieces would get shorter and stubbier and stubbier. I actually have one here that actually will have some shorter, stubbier pieces on it. Here's a different one that's much more thinned out. This would be, I'd say, more of an inner forest. See how much more sporadic the foliage is. You can see some of the smaller dead branch material up top. But again, you know, this is more of an inner forest. This one we're going to keep as is. And there you kind of have it. I don't know if, again, you know, what we would do now is hold this, cut this off with a hacksaw blade, hobby saw, whatever you use. And in the kit comes the pins. Pair of needle nose pliers. Once this is cut off, you don't need to pre-drill hole the balsa, so it'll push in. I don't have the hobby saw next to me here, so I'm not going to do that. Or any other way you want to mount them, but it does come with the kit. So there you have it. There's plenty of material for the next tree, and again, you will have some left over. In a different video, I'll do a distress tree, which keeps this much more sporadic, and I'll also, you know, we'll do a couple of additional details for them. So you have it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you visit our next video. Thank you.